As long as I was going after the crooks that didn't have badges, I was everybody's hero.
And we're back for episode 3 of this series. We're talking with Aubrey Robertson. He is a candidate for McLennan County District Attorney. Our last episode, we talked about marijuana laws in the state of Texas and how Robbie would handle some of that when he's elected DA. And I promised we'd talk about guns and gun law, but we didn't get around to it. We had so much fun talking about weed. So, Robbie, welcome back.
Thanks for having me.
Glad to see you.
Yes, sir.
By the way, Robbie works in our office.
Right.
He's an attorney in our office here in Waco. I want to get him to give you a little bit about his working background, and then we're going to jump right off into talking about guns.
Perfect. So my legal career actually started as a prosecutor in Harris County. I was fresh out of law school. Like I said, I had been an intern at the Harris County DA's office, but they hired me, so they must have not thought, too poorly of me. They hired me. Gave me a position.
Well, they should have hired you. Damn, you were an honor student from Baylor and graduated from New York Law School, man.
Hey, agreed.
Yeah.
So
with a specialty degree in Ukrainian constitutions.
right. Slavic studies, but yes, it's all the same. Being a baby prosecutor is an incredible experience. You've even talked about your experience as a brand new lawyer, and I had a similar experience as a prosecutor, which is basically you get licensed on one day, and either that same day or the next morning, I got sworn in on, the 20th floor of the courthouse, went down to my office on the 4th floor and got told, okay, you're going to trial on Monday, and here's all your cases. And so it is really a trial by fire situation. The Harris County DA's office is a huge office. I don't know that people understand how big it's hundreds of lawyers, hundreds of staff, hundreds of investigators. It's a massive office. And so you have the opportunity of working with and seeing some incredible lawyers, both on the state side and the criminal defense side. I went and watched Dick DeGuerin try cases, or there was another attorney, his name was Rocket Rosen in Houston, try cases. Doug Murphy, Mark Thiessen. These are huge lawyers in Houston that we had the opportunity as Harris County DAs to go and watch and learn from. And it was such an impactful experience because every lawyer will tell you that, especially a trial lawyer, will tell you that when you watch something and you like it, copy it, try it on, see if it works for you. Obviously, if it doesn't work, let it go. But that's how we develop our style as trial lawyers, is by copying other really good trial lawyers. So being a prosecutor in Houston gave me an exceptional opportunity to learn from some really incredible trial lawyers. It also gave me the opportunity to work closely with like the Houston Police Department. And in Harris County, the constables' offices are huge law enforcement entities in a way they aren't here. And you start to build those relationships with law enforcement. In fact, our current Waco Police Department chief is a former Houston Police Department officer. And so the prosecution and the law enforcement, they work so closely together. And I don't know how much people realize that. And so as a baby prosecutor, it was, going in and forging those relationships with officers and going on ride-alongs and getting those experiences. And in Houston, after you spend a little bit of time as a misdemeanor prosecutor, they yank you up into felony land and you start trying felonies. I had the great experience of trying a murder case when I was still a misdemeanor prosecutor.
Oh, wow.
Because the size of the office, it wasn't completely unusual to have a felony prosecutor on a Friday afternoon come walk the misdemeanor floor and see if there were any lawyers around, and you'd get drug into a trial. And so I was sitting at my desk one afternoon, and my friend Lauren walked in and she said, "Hey, you want to come try this murder case with me next week?" And I said, "Absolutely." Right away. And so we tried that murder case. That victim had been burned. He had been standing at a stove and somebody had thrown a cup of gasoline on him, and it was a gas stove. And so he got lit on fire. And he survived. He survived for 8 days in the hospital. And this is, and you know this from all your experience prosecuting murder cases, you spend so much time looking at these photos from autopsies or, you know, things like that, these really gruesome photos. But I learned in that case, for example, that when your body burns, your skin shrinks. And so these doctors were performing, I think, what they called escherotomies, where they would slice the skin on my victim's extremities to relieve some of the pressure. And so I had these, you know, horrific pictures that I showed to the jury of what my victim went through at the hands of that defendant. And so that was a great experience as a young lawyer, as a very young prosecutor. I'll tell you, Lauren, my friend who was the felony prosecutor, she looked at me at one point during the trial and she was like, "Isn't flying by the seat of your pants fun?" And no, it's not. It's not fun. I was so concerned that maybe she wasn't taking this seriously. But I talked to her afterwards, and she said that was her way of lightening the mood. That
right.
I was too intense, and so she was trying to
picking on the new guy.
Right, right. It was hazing. I was getting hazed. So, you know, I was a misdemeanor prosecutor and a felony prosecutor in Harris County. And then a friend of mine who was a defense attorney had an opening at his firm. And I went into private practice in Houston for a few years. I worked mainly in Houston and Galveston doing criminal defense work. And then in 2014, there was an opening here at the McLennan County DA's office. And I'd gone to Baylor. I love Waco. And so I applied here, and Abel Reyna was the DA at the time. And so he hired me, and he hired me initially as a misdemeanor prosecutor, but I mean, I rose through the ranks pretty quickly, all the way up to chief of the 19th District Court. So I was the chief felony prosecutor, supervised some other prosecutors, handled all the more serious cases for the court.
So you supervised everything in that court.
Correct.
And the other prosecutors that went into that court.
Correct. So and
it's your job to liaison with the judge.
Correct. And anybody who, I am a very organized person generally, and I had systems in place for checking with my prosecutors. And it is being a supervisor in those scenarios where I'm not only worried about the 600 cases that are in my filing cabinet in my office, but now I'm concerned with the entire docket. And I think it's important for whoever our district attorney is to be able to see the big picture.
Sure.
You and I have talked about how you would routinely review, you know, the inmate list from the jail to see how long somebody had been
almost daily
in custody. Yeah. And that to me is a great practice, because we shouldn't have people sitting in jail for 1,000 days only to go to trial and be found not guilty. The DA, if he sees somebody sitting in jail for a long time, should be hammering on his prosecutors. What's going on with that case? Why is this person still in jail?
Yeah. Captain Dan Wingberg used to take the jail list, and 3-4 times a week we'd sit down over a cup of coffee in my office for at least an hour, going over that list and figuring out who's been in there, who needs to get to trial, who we need to lower the bond on to get them out, what needs to be dismissed that shouldn't have been filed in the first place.
Yeah.
And he was a very valuable resource. He was Jack Harwell's number 2 man.
Well, and it's not only important for keeping cases moving through the system, right? Like making sure the system remains efficient. There are certain consequences in law if somebody is held past a certain point and not indicted, for example. You know, you become entitled to what we call a PR bond, a personal recognizance bond, if you are arrested on a felony and not indicted in a certain amount of days. And so if prosecutors aren't keeping track of those people who are in jail, you get to a situation where somebody charged with an absolutely heinous crime might get a bond.
Right.
Because the law says they do.
Right.
And so it is important to track that those cases that are in jail, because we got to get people moving through the system.
One thing I want to point out that I think makes you eminently qualified for this job as a DA is that not only have you been a defense lawyer, so you know what it's like on the other side. You know the pressure they're under. You know what gets their emotions hot. And you've been there. You've dealt with it. So you know how to build those bridges. You've been an assistant DA. So you know how to prosecute those cases.
Right.
You know the criminal law. You did the criminal law internship. You were an assistant DA in Houston as well.
Right.
But then it brings us to the next point. That's something you've got that nobody else has or had that was in this election, including Barry, and that was an experience supervising other lawyers.
Right.
And you supervised other assistant DAs.
Correct.
Getting them into the court, telling them how to do it, trying cases with them.
Right. Well, and that really is an invaluable experience for that office, because you are the leader. You are the one who's setting policy, and so you need to be able to supervise multiple people. I enjoyed supervising the lawyers that I got to work with, and we would oftentimes. I won't say oftentimes. We would butt heads occasionally, as you do with any relationship like that. And we would have conversations about our cases and about what justice was in those cases. And do we really need to go forward and try this case, or should we focus on this case over here?
So you're also teaching them how to think.
Right. I'm trying to teach someone how to see the bigger picture, because you learn supervising lawyers, especially trial lawyers, that there are some skills you can teach and there are some skills you cannot teach. And so I can't teach somebody how to be charismatic or how to connect with a jury. That is something that only they can develop. But I can teach them how to understand how the docket moves and how to move it efficiently and what priorities they should have as a prosecutor. And that, when I hire assistants after I've won the selection, when I hire assistants, that's what I'm going to be looking for is a willingness to learn those systems.
And I would like to see a DA in this county that would teach prosecutorial ethics.
Right.
Because there have been some prosecutors, over the last couple of years that barely skated by, not getting grievances filed on them.
I think some have gotten grievances
Really?
filed
Okay.
on them. Yeah.
So it's, and used to the state bar wouldn't take those grievances against a prosecutor, but now they do.
Right.
And so they have to be more familiar with the ethics involved. They have to know what the elements of an offense are.
Right.
They have to know when they're stepping over the line and being vindictive rather than seeking justice.
Right.
And those are things that I think you would be really good at teaching.
Well, I think any prosecutor should be concerned, whether they're the elected DA or whether you're a misdemeanor prosecutor going in to try your first DWI case, you should be concerned with what I call conviction integrity. When I go in and try a case as a prosecutor, I want that case to stand up on appeal.
Mm-hmm.
And so what that means is I follow the law. I go above and beyond. And that's what I think you get to with prosecutorial ethics, talking about when we say we have an open file policy, or when you have a law out there like Brady that says you hand over things that are beneficial to the defendant, do it.
Yeah, I know. You
Just
and I
do
have a
it.
case pending right now that we've been trying to get Brady material on for
Right.
3 years.
Right.
3 years. They know it exists.
Correct.
They created it.
Right.
And they won't give it to us, yet they won't dismiss this case that they've known for 3 years ought to be dismissed.
Correct.
The last prosecutor I talked to about it personally stuck his hand in my face and said, "Talk to the hand. I'm not talking to you."
Well-
and I was going to try that case against him, and then he hauled ass. He moved somewhere else. I was still wanting to beat him in court on that, but I think it'll eventually get dismissed. It's not a good case.
I agree. And I think that's what happens is I think as young prosecutors, you do have that compass, you do have that sense of what's right and wrong, but at some point it gets beaten out of you.
Yeah.
Because you just have so many cases. And so the prosecutor has to practice what I call triage justice. You know, you have, if in each court there are 40 cases set for trial every Monday, you know you cannot go to trial on 40 cases, but there they are, and they're sitting on my desk. That's what I have to worry about.
Right.
I can't think 2 weeks, 3 weeks, a month into the future. I have these cases on my desk that are bleeding out. This is what I have to concern myself with. And when I can't look forward like that, when I can't plan, I end up having cases that sit around for too long, or cases where somebody sits in jail for too long.
And there are a lot of those cases that need to be dismissed and sent back to the police department for more investigation. I used to get real upset about this with the police that do a half-assed case, bring it to my office, and then think we should do the rest of the investigation. Right. They're the detectives, not us.
Well, and you're absolutely right about that. And I think what that goes to is we need to fund our police departments.
Yes, we do.
At the level that they should be funded so we can have good investigators.
And our police should be paid at a rate that they don't qualify for food stamps if they have 2 kids. Right. It's just awful what we pay our teachers and our policemen. We'll pay a football player, millions and millions a year, but we don't pay our teachers and our policemen, the ones that are on the ground protecting us and taking care of us and our children every day.
Right.
And we just push them off to the side. We got to get our priorities straight as an entire nation.
Right. Well, and that's what I ask people too when talking about police funding is how much would somebody have to pay you in salary to every day put on a bulletproof vest and a gun and go to a job where there's a real opportunity or possibility that you might not come home?
Right.
Like, how much would somebody have to pay you for that? Because I guarantee you police officers aren't getting paid that much money.
No, there's not enough money out there for me to, and I've been a policeman back in my first job.
And these people are clearly called to this work. I feel that when you talk to law enforcement officers, you feel it. Their passion for their job it comes through. And so we have got to fund our police. And there was that big, defund the police movement, which is, just the most ridiculous thing. And it has to come from people that have never worked side by side with police officers. Because if you had worked with police officers, if you had been in the trenches with those guys in trial, then you'd be wanting to write bigger paychecks, not take money away.
And the jurisdictions that were pushing that before are now doing a really quick backstroke.
Correct.
Never mind.
Right.
Never mind. Bad idea.
Very true.
Yeah. I remember when that first came up, I thought, how stupid.
Right. If somebody's breaking into my house and I call 911, I want the police to show up with everything they got. Like I want the big guns, and so.
Let me tell you why I left the police department, and then that will segue us into our next topic.
Perfect.
I was at the police department in 68 and 69, and this was before all the free-floating hostility and the senseless violence. Back then, if there was a crime, there was a motive. There was a reason. Right. The people knew each other. It wasn't you kill somebody. The first time that ever happened that I can recall was when Whitman climbed the tower at UT and started shooting people random.
Right.
Well, I went to work right after that, and I had been there just less than a year when a young policeman, kind of like me in San Antonio, walks out the back door and he's shot dead from way across the street with a scope. They catch the guy. It's a 17-year-old kid, and he says, I just wanted to see what it was like to kill a cop.
Wow.
And I thought, oh my God, I have got a target on me. Yeah. And that's when I started looking at leaving. That's when my dad helped me find the position at Mary Hardin Baylor, where I could be a campus boy and work my way through college. And so it was because of that gun violence that was starting to emerge then that I said, I don't want to be putting myself out there where I can be shot at all the time. So I really feel for the policemen. Right. I do. Because every time they walk around a corner, every time they get out of their car to approach another one, they don't know, is this the moment?
And that's why they all tell you there's no such thing as a routine traffic stop.
Exactly.
because it changes in a moment's notice.
Yeah.
And the other thing that you said that really struck me is talking about, running around a corner. I prosecuted, there was a case here when I was chief in the 19th, where an individual tried to shoot and kill a Waco police officer. The individual had been involved in some type of altercation, some domestic disturbance, and police had responded to the scene, and he takes off running. So he's evading on foot. So I have a apartment security guard and several Waco police officers chasing this guy on foot. And he runs into an alley, the defendant does, and the officer runs right after him, right into the darkness. This officer runs, and the defendant is standing there waiting for him and fires several rounds in the direction of the officer. Luckily, he wasn't killed. And so we prosecuted that case, and that guy's now going to sit in prison for the rest of his life, thankfully. And so when we talk about how these men and women are really in danger of not coming home, I've seen it firsthand, just like you have. These are real people with real families. Chief Holt testified in that trial for us about the impact on law enforcement and the families. And I just remember Chief Holt, the former chief of police, in tears talking about how traumatic it is for these officers to go through something like that. And, the support we had from Waco PD, my trial partner was David Shaw. He's another great lawyer here in Waco. We had so much support from the police department. It was so rewarding to be able to prosecute that case.
Okay, here's our segue. Guns.
Yes.
It was to talk about guns.
Right.
What do you think about guns?
Well, I think that we're about to use, on some of our cases, some of the new federal law to our advantage.
Tell me about that. Tell us about that.
I say federal law, but there was an opinion out of a federal district court in the Dallas-Fort Worth area. I forget the judge's name now, where he basically declared a section of our Texas Penal Code unconstitutional because it violated the Second Amendment. And what he said was, here in Texas, it is illegal, the current penal code, it says it is illegal to possess a firearm, a handgun, if you are under the age of 18. And so this judge up in the Dallas-Fort Worth area said, well, I don't see anything in the Second Amendment about an age limit. And he walked through the history and everything of the Second Amendment and declared that this portion of the Texas Penal Code, that specific portion, not the whole law, but that specific portion was unconstitutional. And so now you have defendants across the state charged with this specific crime that has just been declared unconstitutional.
Yeah,
and
about a month ago.
Right. And so now if you're a prosecutor, you should consider looking at those cases and deciding if you want to hang on to them or not. My recommendation would probably be to dismiss those cases.
Sure. Deep six it.
Right. I mean, I don't know why we'd be prosecuting those cases in the first place.
Yeah, unless there were extenuating
absolutely.
Something that would aggravate it, aggravating circumstances. But the one like we've got, the cop pulls up just because the car was parked the wrong direction and searches everybody out in the front yard. And here's this guy, 18 years old, or not quite 18, he's got a gun.
Right.
Wasn't using it, had never used it, had never been in trouble. And they arrest him for it.
Well, and what you find out as a criminal defense lawyer that's oftentimes different from the experience as a prosecutor, when we talk to our client and we find out, why he felt the need to have a gun. He wanted to protect his mother, who had been beaten by his father, who had been deported to Mexico because he had beaten his mother. So he's doing it out of a sense of, there's not ever going to be another man that puts his hands on my mom again. Mm-hmm. And so he gets a gun. And I don't know anybody in this state who would fault somebody for protecting their mom. Right. You know what I mean? And so this case should absolutely be dismissed. I hope the prosecutors do do the right thing here.
So from what you're saying, can I read into that you are not in favor of going into people's houses and taking their guns?
Oh, no. I think people should absolutely have the, I believe the Second Amendment is an individual right to bear arms. I enjoy hunting, which is something I've picked up in the last few years. And I don't have any problem with lawful gun ownership. I think everybody would agree that the problem is when you have people who want to take these weapons and use them illegally. I don't have any problem with like I said, lawful gun ownership. You can have as many guns as you want.
We just need to be responsible.
Right.
When I was in high school, and I went to a very small school, there were only 30 people in my graduating class, Leander High, 1968. Every car in the parking lot had a gun in it.
Right.
A lot of the pickup trucks had them in the back window, and we didn't even lock our doors in those days.
Right.
Just leave the truck unlocked. I remember I was in class one day, and the principal came and knocked on the door, and it was like a study hall. He said, I want to see Vic. And everybody goes, ooh, I said, oh crap, I'm in trouble. What'd I do? I go out in the hall. He says, I heard from George that you got a new gun. I said, I do. It's a 22. It's,
Right.
I described it for him. He said, show it to me. And so we went out to the parking lot, opened the trunk. I showed it to him. He looked at it. Oh, that's nice. That's nice. When we put it back, I went back in. That was it. Wow, times have changed,
Right.
Robbie. Like this week, we had that hoax shooting call in at Waco High. People have just gotten crazy.
Yeah, and I think the point that you make is a good one, that it comes down to responsible gun ownership, right? I think, and I know there's people in this country that kind of disregard this idea of growing up in a gun culture or it being part of a culture, but where we live and in certain parts of the country, it really is a part of people's heritage and culture. And I think that has to absolutely be respected. That doesn't mean necessarily that you get to go down to the gun shop and buy an Uzi. That you don't get to go there and buy a grenade launcher. It is okay to talk about reasonable restrictions in that realm. But you can have as many guns as you want. Use as many guns as you need to protect all your legally grown marijuana. That's what I want.
Yeah, just be safe and be responsible. Don't be shooting where you don't know where that bullet's gonna go.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Well, and I have a friend of mine who has an AR-15, and I had never fired one before. And so when it's been a few years ago now, I asked him. I said, "Take me to the range. Let me fire this AR-15." And I know you have a lot more experience with guns than I do, but it was fun. I see the appeal of it. Absolutely. But again,
Yeah.
it's about responsibility. It's about teaching responsibility to our children, and it's about not passing the buck in that area to anybody else.
Yeah. But if you ever go shoot a Winchester pump with an 18 1/4 barrel with double-aught buck, don't do it very long.
Okay.
I got the worst bruise in my shoulder I've ever had. I tell you, I looked awful, and it didn't go away for nearly 6 weeks.
Wow.
I spent about an hour out there shooting that gun, and it messed me up, man. So don't do that.
No.
Now, 10 gauge, that's all right, but that double-aught buck, oh, man, that'll hurt you.
Well, we have a little deer lease down in Lampasas County, and I've been seeing all the pigs on the camera lately. And so my goal this season is to get a pig. That's what I really want, is a pig. So hopefully I'll be able to, I guess, bring home the bacon.
There's a guy in town who's a good pig hunter, Bo Johnson. And Bo does it not only with, I don't know if he still does it because I hadn't talked to Bo probably in 6 or 7 years, but he showed me a video one time where he had taken some kind of explosive device and hung it from a tree and put some corn under it. And then he waited till like 6 or 7 of them showed up. And then from way up, he shoots that thing and goes, and you could see the pigs just kind of flinch.
Right.
And then they fall over.
Wow.
He got like 6 of them at once.
I need something. The raccoons are getting into our feeder nonstop. I mean, we've put what shark's teeth, what they call, all over the feeder. And they get in there and they spin that little plate where the corn is. And
oh, they're smart. They're so smart. They're just little burglars.
Right. I want one of those explosive devices. So when I see them on the camera, I can take them out.
I've probably killed a couple thousand coons in my life, but most of them when I was in high school. There was a season for raccoons back then, November to February. And I would run traps in the morning and do my rifle at night, and then I'd go to Duckett's fur house. I'd skin them, scrape them, me and like 10 other boys.
Right.
And nail them to the floor. And Mr. Duckett hadn't bought any new nails since probably World War I. Some of them were square and all bent.
Hand forged.
Yeah, and no heat. February, you hit your thumb. Oh, it would hurt. But yeah, I bet I've killed a couple thousand coons. I'm a good shot.
Yeah.
We had a Marine recruiter in our church that really tried to get me to join the Marines when I was in high school because he wanted me to go to Vietnam and be a sniper. I really wanted to do that.
Well, you send me the pictures of some of the amazing wildlife that you see around your place. And it's incredible.
Yeah,
it's incredible.
Well, I've gotten real pacifistic. Is that the right word? Pacifistic?
You've become a pacifist.
Yeah, when it comes to the little animals lately.
Right.
The only thing I'll kill now is a damn armadillo because they mess up my yard real bad. I used to kill the coons where we live now, but then I discovered these raccoon and squirrel-proof bird feeders.
Oh, yeah.
So now I just leave them alone unless they get to be a mess. But yeah, I can hit one of those things on the run.
Yeah, I didn't have the experience killing raccoons as a kid, but my grandparents had a farm with chicken houses. And so I would walk those chicken houses run by Tyson Farms, since I was a little boy. And, my job was to walk through there and pick up all the dead chickens and put them in a 5-gallon bucket and walk them over to the incinerator.
Yeah.
And so
that's a messy job.
It's a messy job. There's nothing like the smell of chicken shit in the morning.
I know. I've been there. Did you ever have to vaccinate them?
Oh, yeah.
Yeah? Did you ever vaccinate yourself?
No, I've never done that.
I vaccinated myself, I bet you 30, 40, 50 times. Yeah.
My grandfather, whose farm it was, he liked to haze me and give me a hard time. After we had the chickens for the amount of time we were going to have them, Tyson Holly Farms would come and pick up the chickens and take them to their next house where they would continue to grow. And so to do that, you would have to go in these chicken houses and raise the water lines and the feed lines. And sometimes these chickens would sit up there on the water lines and the feed lines. And so my grandfather would have me go scare these chickens off the lines. And one time I was under a chicken and it crapped all over my head. And my grandfather just thought it was the funniest thing in the world and stood there laughing. They didn't do anything to help me. And it was quite the experience.
Well, that got you ready for politics.
Right. Yeah, exactly. There's a lot of similarities there. Being crapped on by a chicken and running for office.
Folks, we're talking to Aubrey Robertson, a lawyer here in Waco and a candidate for McLennan County DA. Get out and vote for him. I think if you've been listening to him, this is our 3rd episode with Robbie. We're going to have another one for sure, maybe some more after that. And I'm sure a lot of you like what he's got to say because I know a bunch of you. I know how you feel about your guns. I know about how you feel about your weed. And we're going to come back and talk about some other things you're probably interested in. So this is the Vic Feazell Show. We're a true crime, a primary source podcast. And right now, Aubrey is our primary source. So join us next time. We'll be talking to Aubrey again. This is Vic. Hi, I'm Vic Feazell. During these trying times, you might want to just stay home. And at the law offices of Vic Feazell, we understand. That's why we're set up to handle your personal injury claim without you even having to come in. Just give us a call, and we'll take it from there. We can send any paperwork straight to your smartphone or computer. Don't delay, because if we don't put money in your pocket, you don't owe us anything. I'm Vic Feazell.